Technological unemployment is the loss of jobs caused by technological change. Such change typically includes the introduction of labor-saving machines or more efficient processes. Historical examples include artisan weavers reduced to poverty after the introduction of mechanized looms. A contemporary example of technological unemployment is the displacement of retail cashiers by self-service tills. That technological change can cause short-term job losses is widely accepted. The view that it can lead to lasting increases in unemployment has long been controversial. Participants in the technological unemployment debates can be broadly divided into optimists and pessimists. Optimists agree that innovation may be disruptive to jobs in the short term, yet hold that various compensation effects ensure there is never a long-term negative impact on jobs. Whereas pessimists contend that at least in some circumstances, new technologies can lead to a lasting decline in the total number of workers in employment. The phrase, technological unemployment, was popularized by Lord Keynes in the 1930s. Yet the issue of machines displacing human labor has been discussed since at least Aristotle's time. Prior to the 18th century, both the elite and common people would generally take the pessimistic view on technological unemployment, at least in cases where the issue arose. Due to generally low unemployment in much of pre-modern history, the topic was rarely a prominent concern. In the 18th century, fears over the impact of machinery on jobs intensified with the growth of mass unemployment, especially in Great Britain, which was then at the forefront of the Industrial Revolution. Yet some economic thinkers began to argue against these fears, claiming that overall innovation would not have negative effects on jobs. These arguments were formalized in the early 19th century by the classical economists. During the second half of the 19th century, it became increasingly apparent that technological progress was benefiting all sections of society, including the working class. Concerns over the negative impact of innovation diminished. The term, Luddite fallacy, was coined to describe the thinking that innovation would have lasting harmful effects on employment. The view that technology is unlikely to lead to long-term unemployment has been repeatedly challenged by a minority of economists. In the early 1800s, these included Ricardo himself. There were dozens of economists warning about technological unemployment during brief intensifications of the debate that spiked in the 1930s and 1960s. Especially in Europe, there were further warnings in the closing 2 decades of the 20th century. As commentators noted, an enduring rise in unemployment suffered by many industrialized nations since the 1970s. Yet a clear majority of both professional economists and the interested general public held the optimistic view through most of the 20th century. In the second decade of the 21st century, a number of studies have been released suggesting that technological unemployment may be increasing worldwide. Further increases are forecast for the years to come. While many economists and commentators still argue such fears are unfounded, as was widely accepted for most of the previous 2 centuries, concern over technological unemployment is growing once again. Issues within the technological unemployment debates. Long-term effects on employment. There are more sectors losing jobs than creating jobs, and the general-purpose aspect of software technology means that even the industries and jobs that it creates are not forever. Lawrence Summers. All participants in the technological employment debates agree that temporary job losses can result from technical innovation. Similarly, there is no dispute that innovation sometimes has positive effects on workers. Disagreement focuses on whether it is possible for innovation to have a lasting negative impact on overall employment. Levels of persistent unemployment can be quantified empirically, but the causes are subject to debate. Optimists accept short-term unemployment may be caused by innovation, yet claim that after a while, compensation effects will always create at least as many jobs as were originally destroyed. While this optimistic view has been continually challenged, it was dominant among mainstream economists for most of the 19th and 20th centuries. The concept of structural unemployment, a lasting level of joblessness that does not disappear even at the high point of the business cycle, became popular in the 1960s. For pessimists, technological unemployment is one of the factors driving the wider phenomena of structural unemployment. Since the 1980s, even optimistic economists have increasingly accepted that structural unemployment has indeed risen in advanced economies. But they have tended to blame this on globalization and offshoring rather than technological change. Others claim a chief cause of the lasting increase in unemployment has been the reluctance of governments to pursue expansionary policies since the displacement of Keynesianism that occurred in the 1970s and early 80s. In the 21st century, and especially since 2013, pessimists have been arguing with increasing frequency that lasting worldwide technological unemployment is a growing threat. On the other hand, from a perhaps more positive perspective, some have argued that technological change will alter the structure of an organization in the sense that those in management roles will increasingly become more specialized to those roles as technology that assists collaboration and workflow management allows employees to manage themselves. The typical management role will, as a result, change to allow managers to concentrate on the task of supporting employees and improving their performance, thus allowing them to add more, rather than less, value. Compensation effects are labor-friendly consequences of innovation which compensate workers for job losses initially caused by new technology. In the 1820s, several compensation effects were described by Say in response to Ricardo's statement that long-term technological unemployment could occur. Soon after, a whole system of effects was developed by Ramsay McCulloch. The system was labeled compensation theory by Marx, who proceeded to attack the ideas, arguing that none of the effects were guaranteed to operate. Compensation effects include 1. By new machines, 2. By new investments, 3. By changes in wages, 4. By lower prices, 5. By new products. The by new machines effect is now rarely discussed by economists. It is often accepted that Marx successfully refuted it. Even pessimists often concede that product innovation associated with the by new products effect can sometimes have a positive effect on employment. An important distinction can be drawn between process and product innovations. The extent to which the other effects are successful in compensating the workforce for job losses has been extensively debated throughout the history of modern economics. The issue is still not resolved. Many economists now pessimistic about technological unemployment accept that compensation effects did largely operate as the optimists claimed, through most of the 19th and 20th century. Yet they hold that the advent of computerization means that compensation effects are now less effective. An early example of this argument was made by Wassily Leontief in 1983. He conceded that after some disruption, the advance of mechanization during the Industrial Revolution actually increased the demand for labor as well as increasing pay due to effects that flow from increased productivity. While early machines lowered the demand for muscle power, they were unintelligent and needed large armies of human operators to remain productive. Yet since the introduction of computers into the workplace, there is now less need not just for muscle power but also for human brain power. Hence, even as productivity continues to rise, the lower demand for human labor may mean less pay and employment. The Luddite fallacy. If the Luddite fallacy were true, we would all be out of work because productivity has been increasing for 2 centuries. Alex. Tabarrok. The term Luddite fallacy is sometimes used to express the view that those concerned about long-term technological unemployment are committing a fallacy, as they fail to account for compensation effects. People who use the term typically expect that technological progress will have no long-term impact on employment levels, and eventually will raise wages for all workers, because progress helps to increase the overall wealth of society. The term is based on the early 19th century example of the Luddites. During the 20th century and the first decade of the 21st century, the dominant view among the economists has been that belief in long-term technological unemployment was indeed a fallacy. More recently, there has been increased support for the view that the so-called fallacy may after all be correct. There are two underlying premises for why long-term difficulty could develop. The one that has traditionally been ascribed to the Luddites is a fallacious one in which there is a finite amount of work that could exist, a lump of labor, such that if machines do that work, there can be no other work left for humans to do. This is called the lump of labor fallacy. However, the other premise is that it is possible for long-term difficulty to arise that has nothing to do with any lump of labor. In this view, the amount of work that can exist is infinite, but machines can do most of the easy work. The definition of what is easy expands as information technology progresses, and the work that lies beyond easy may require greater cognitive faculties than most humans are able to supply, as point 2 continually advances. This latter view is the one supported by most modern advocates of the possibility of long-term, systemic technological unemployment. Skill levels and technological unemployment, a common view among those discussing the effect of innovation on the labor market has been that it mainly hurts those with low skills, while often benefiting skilled workers. According to scholars such as Lawrence F. Katz, this may have been true for much of the 20th century, yet in the 19th century, innovations in the workplace largely displaced costly skilled artisans, and generally benefited the low-skilled, while 21st century innovation has been replacing some unskilled work. Other low-skilled occupations remain resistant to automation, while white-collar work requiring intermediate skills is increasingly being performed by autonomous computer programs. Some recent studies, however, such as a 2015 paper by Georg Gratz and Guy Michaels, found that at least in the area they studied, the impact of industrial robots, innovation is boosting pay for highly skilled workers while having a more negative impact on those with low to medium skills. A 2015 report by Carl Benedict Frey, Michael Osborne and City Research agreed that innovation had been disruptive mostly to middle-skilled jobs, yet predicted that in the next 10 years the impact of automation would fall most heavily on those with low skills. Jeff Colvin at Forbes argued that predictions on the kind of work a computer will never be able to do have proven inaccurate. A better approach to anticipate the skills on which humans will provide value would be to find out activities where we will insist that humans remain accountable for important decisions, such as with judges, CEOs and government leaders, or where human nature requires to satisfy deep interpersonal needs, even if those tasks could be automated.